Welcome back. This is Jordan Trask and Jack Heald here, talking a little bit about branding and some of the aspects that go into branding. We've took a little break here over the last few weeks, but we wanted to dive right back into it and talk today about some of the neurological factors or effects of videography and how you can present yourself and how you're really perceived on social media or online or wherever the video is played. So without further ado, I know Jack's already on here, but I wanted to have him talk a little bit about just neurology in general and how that ties into video. And then we could start talking about some of the factors or ways to use it.
Cool. Well, I think it's important to kind of define terms to start with. Neurological refers to our nervous system, the nervous system that runs throughout our body. So everything that we perceive with our senses is run through our neurological system. Video is really cool because of the way that it affects us neurologically, the way our nervous system processes it. When you're watching, I'll back up one moment. It's well established that we've got two hemispheres in our brain, two halves, and a dominant and a non-dominant side. The dominant side of the brain processes math and verbal ability, language, logic. It's moral. The non-dominant side of our brain is intuitive. It does pattern recognition. It's the part of our brain that processes art and music. So the cool thing about video, when it's done right, is it engages both the dominant and the non-dominant hemispheres of our brain. In other words, literally at a physical level, at a biological level, your brain is more engaged with the right kinds of video because you're providing images, which engages the pattern recognition part of the brain. If you're talking or if you're displaying language on screen, you're engaging the verbal part of the brain. So you've got both the dominant and the non-dominant side that are engaged. Even more important, however, is that you are engaging both the deductive and the intuitive sides of the brain. Anybody who's been involved in sales knows that the reason people buy and the excuse for buying are two different things. We buy for emotional reasons. We justify our decision to buy for logical reasons. That logic is taking place on the dominant side of the brain, and we use our language to explain that. However, the intuitive side of the brain is at the biological level is the part that says, I need that, I want that, but is not necessarily able to express it. So all those decisions to buy that happen at an intuitive emotional level get routed through the dominant verbal side of the brain, which has to come up with a logical explanation. So video goes right to, when you're using both images and language, video goes right to the part of the brain where the decision-making happens anyway. Something that you can't really do as well with a written form of communication or a static visual form of communication. And that's why video can be so much more effective and so much more powerful.
What do you think, just talking about it more from an advertising perspective, how do you think that can change if you're thinking about curating a video or producing a video for a brand or for your brand? If you're thinking about doing a TV commercial where it pops up in between a show that obviously you're emotionally attached to, or jumping up in front of you on your social media feed as you're just browsing, how do you think that neurological plays into that strength?
When you're already engaged with some kind of video, particularly television, one of the dangers that we have to be aware of with video is that it induces a state in the brain where we go from it induces a state in the brain that's very similar to sleeping. When you're asleep, when you're in deep sleep, your brain is in what's called a low alpha state. And this is just a measurement of the electrical activity in the prefrontal cortex. television tends to induce that kind of state. So video advertising in the context of TV has got to break that state. And there's good ways to do it and really bad ways to do it. It's a little different when you're dealing with social media, like on YouTube or what else did you say, like in your Instagram feed?
Yeah,
because the video in those situations either breaks the current brain state by its very nature. I'm sorry, I tried to set a 5-minute timer and we just hit it. Video, for instance, in an Instagram feed breaks the brain state anyway, so that's very positive. YouTube, in general, now I haven't seen any scientific studies that will demonstrate this, but my intuition and my experience tells me that people are more engaged neurologically when they're watching YouTube videos, just simply by the nature of the videos that typically get viewed. So the video, the context that the video appears in will change with how you need to do it. What we're doing right now will be very effective in an Instagram feed or on YouTube. It will be less effective if somebody's watching television. There's some more you got to do to break that brain state in television, and I write pretty extensively about that.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Because if you're trying to push a new idea or switching the topic up altogether, like we would be doing if this was a TV commercial, not only is it going to kind of throw off the thought process or just engagement of that person sitting there watching, but it's going to be confusing. You know, I'm here to watch something specific, and these commercials are more of a distraction, or they play into the show because it's a certain demographic. And if you throw that off a little bit, not only can you, throwing it into a branding concept, you'll throw off your branding and the perception, the way people may remember you.
Yeah.
Because of just the timing. And I think that's what's so cool about videos and just different factors of videos. And I was trying to pull up a case study I read yesterday here on Hasbro.
Right.
And it really took a new strategy for YouTube, and it was outside of that traditional. It caught my eye because it was outside of traditional branding from what they have been doing. And they did a big case study on it and how it was scary for them because they had never ventured in YouTube before. They normally stayed on TV or with their short videos for kids.
Right.
And they took on this My Little Pony strategy on YouTube, where they just did 10-minute segments of their shows, but then also engaged with just different animation graphics and visualizations before videos on YouTube. And they poured a lot of their money right into YouTube, but they were very purposeful and specific with it. And they took the time to develop a strategy that was geared right towards that YouTube audience. And I think just transitioning this conversation from, what is that neurological effect of video on people in general, but now how do we apply this to marketing and branding? And I think that's really important because I also read another article yesterday from Buffer, which I was trying to bring up to you, but I just lost my train of thought. And they realized that they were posting everything on Facebook, every video, every form of engagement or content, a lot of curated content that they had purposed for Facebook. And they realized that, Facebook isn't for everything. You have to have the right timing, target the right people, and make sure that what they're doing on Facebook, you have to understand what a lot of people are doing on Facebook.
Oh, yeah.
And observe that. If you're causing a distraction in their purpose of being on Facebook that time, then it really does cause that memory that's not a good one. And kind of tying those both together was really cool because you have one company that's venturing off and understanding how a concrete strategy for YouTube was powerful for them, and it drove a lot of engagement and a lot of clicks and a lot of reads, which therefore allowed them to charge a lot for advertising on site. And you have Facebook, who they're just trying to drive awareness for Buffer, which is an automated content publishing system, and that's where they want to target people, is on Facebook. So how you do your videos, how you purpose your videos and cater to your audience, it's all about how you have to understand how the neurological process, I guess, of the customers too. Well, what do you think about that?
I think it helps to know how we as human beings respond to our environment. The reason so much advertising is so ineffective The number of reasons is as broad as the population of the planet. But in general, we can often point to, I know this ad is going to fail, I know that ad is going to fail, simply because they fail to engage us neurologically, biologically, cognitively. They do a really crappy job of communicating to human beings in the way that human beings understand what's being said,
Yeah.
or understand what's being communicated. Television is a vast wasteland, not just of bad programming, but of horrible advertising. One of the really cool things to me, as somebody who's been studying this for a long, long time, is how drastically the environment for anybody who needs to communicate a message has changed because of online video.
Mm-hmm.
It is not television advertising.
Mm-hmm.
It's not television advertising, not because the content of your ad is necessarily different, although it probably is, but because the mental cognitive state of the audience is different when they're watching, when they're looking at their computer, with some minor qualifications. But in general, particularly YouTube, particularly the various forms of social media, very different neurological state than folks are in when they're watching television. And there's a reason why smart advertisers are moving their dollars from TV to an online forum like YouTube or like Facebook. It's because your audience is in a different mental state when they're seeing your content on YouTube or on Facebook than they're in when they're watching television. Big difference.
And I think there's a lot of factors. I mean, you hit it right on the nail there, but I think there's a lot of factors that you have to consider too, is like I already mentioned, is TV, somebody's already engaged. They understand there's going to be commercials, and they either have a DVR they can fast forward, or they're going to have to sit through. I had a friend in college whose parents would mute the commercials and they'd force everybody to talk, and that's cool, but everybody has their own, you know what I mean though? Everybody has their own way of enduring commercials. And I think the big thing, like you just said, I love that point you made, and then about YouTube, is, man, if I'm looking on YouTube for a how-to video, how to build my son's bunk bed, for example, and this 15, 30-second video pops up about, I don't know, gardening. Like, I'm going to be irritated, but if it pops up about some, hero dad with his son that's doing something fun, maybe going to Six Flags or something, then, hey, I might sit through that and start thinking throughout the week, man, I should take my son to Six Flags. But that's true. That's why you laugh, is because it gives you that like concept. It's relevant, and it's not really distracting me from the purpose. I'm trying to do something for my son, maybe with my son, or, I'm a family man. I'm a dad, obviously. And that's the power, like you were just saying, of the video. Now what it's transitioned to, you can either ruin the experience and create that initial memory or perception of what you're trying to do and be viewed as spammy or forceful, or like, this is nonsense. Or you can be viewed as, hey, this is a part of me. This is what I'm doing right now, and this is super relevant, and I appreciate that. And that's what video is all about. And then you even think about just the music and the lingo or the talk track. And if you have captions, Instagram is big, like you mentioned, captions. I know one of my videos, I just put captions on the bottom, and it skyrocketed as far as engagement, because people don't want to stop, look, and try to figure out what I'm talking about. They want a little bit of dialogue there. So like, oh, hey, this is interesting to me or beneficial to me. I can learn something. I'm going to watch it.
Well, you nailed it. You absolutely nailed it. You've got the image. You might have an audio track where somebody is talking, but if you combine that with written words, you're forcing a deeper level of neurological engagement. I mean, if they're watching it and they're literate, then they're reading the words whether they want to or not. That's forcing there's neurologically, it's a very complex process to go from seeing these symbols on a piece of paper, on a screen, and processing those and turning those into ideas. Deep, deep levels of cognition required to do that. But you combine that with the visual imagery, preferably something that requires pattern recognition rather than just something abstract. And then, Jordan, where it really gets awesome is if you've got a music track as well, because then you're hitting even more circuitry in the intuitive, non-dominant side of the brain. Now, it's difficult to do that well. I won't pretend that I'm somebody who's capable of doing it, but I recognize what happens neurologically when it is done well. And that's why it's so effective, because it engages so much of our brains, so much of the circuitry of our bodies that makes us responding human beings. So yeah, I get excited about this stuff. You can
No, me too. I love it. And I mean, just talking about music, like you said, we could go dig even further. I know we're limited on time a little bit, but if you have you're trying to present something elegantly and you have some hard rock or maybe some trap music, rap music in the background that's just like doesn't mesh, like that's another scenario where you're ruining that experience too. Why even force it? I just did a video, it's on my Instagram, for a ranch, and I kind of speeded up a lot of the stuff. So I did a real high tempo, just guitar, like a banjo guitar. And I think I was a little nervous about doing it, but I think it goes with the theme there, because I'm trying to hustle through this ranch and show them everything on the ranch. And it's just kind of a guy strumming pretty quick, and then boom, the video's over in 50 seconds. And I think all that really ties in to that customer experience, or the emotion, right? Because even if, you have something that's real elegant, like maybe a mother-daughter, for example, and you have a soft piano playing, or maybe a harp, that's beautiful. It makes people feel that emotion and have that connection with that ad, and it helps them resonate. And there's so many factors. We could go on and on about video, but we want to keep it high level here on the top. As far as neurologically, it is relevant. It does.
And you're right, that keeping in mind that everything we're doing, the end goal always is more engagement, which means more emotion from the customer, which means more sales. That's what we're after. So engagement through emotion leads to sales. That's what we want to make happen.